Hello, hello, hello. So, Yelena here, and I know we told you guys that we're going to be going live on Facebook tonight, but turns out Facebook doesn't do two-person split screen videos anymore. So, we switched to Instagram Live. So, hello on Instagram Live. Okay, I'm going to let Chanel join before I do my intro. And I'm actually gonna. Hi, hello! Yay!
Hi!
Okay, give me a sec to close the Facebook because it's distracting to see half my face on another screen.
Oh my gosh.
Give me a second. Okay.
No, it's all good. I turned my Facebook off so I can't see their comments just because my Wi-Fi is weird sometimes, so.
Okay. So we will do this. This is fine. This works. Okay. If I can get this set up. Hi, Chanel. How are you?
I'm good. So glad we figured this out.
You look so nice.
Of course, Facebook just decides, oh no, we're not gonna participate with that anymore. So
when did they get rid of that feature? I was like,
I don't remember.
Because they had it before. So Chanel and I have been doing lives for like 2 years now. This would be the third year if we were doing it. So
yeah, 2017, I think.
Fourth year. Okay, so third year. Okay, can't count. Anyway,
third year.
Hi guys. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick intro as you guys join. We will save this and post this somewhere, Facebook, YouTube, wherever I figure out to upload this. But my name's Yelena. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Tirzah. And joining me is Chanel. She is, I guess your title was community director for a bit, maybe, for Tirzah?
Yeah.
Maybe? I don't know. She was a co
I'm the longtime friend who this is how this video came about, guys. This is how most of the stuff comes about when I work with Yelena on Tirzah. It's me texting her late at night and being like, hey, so I have this idea. And I am not a type A person, but I get these ideas and then I just go with them. And so I'm really glad for you.
Yeah, and so we've been working or doing studies together for, I guess, like 3 years now. So we did Women of the Bible in 2018, I think, or 17. Can't remember. And then
2017, we just did it kind of felt random, I think. I don't know. I think we did New Testament. I think we just focused on the New Testament, and then we did whatever we felt compelled to do. So
yes, that's true. That was 17, and then 18 we did Women of the Bible, which I'm about to share all of that in a new and updated study in the Tirzah shop. So that's coming, and all the videos are being uploaded to YouTube very slowly. And then 19 we did 4 quarters of studies. So those are all in the shop as well. So it's been a journey, but tonight we are going to talk about the book of Philippians, and
yay.
I'm pretty excited about it because it's something that's brought me a lot of comfort right now, because if you're watching this video recording later, we are smack dab in the middle of a global pandemic of the coronavirus. So a lot of us are at home, and we were just talking in our Facebook group that a lot of us are been quarantined for anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. And staying at home and sheltering at home. And so we just wanted to really just get together, and I wanted to hang out with everyone. I miss everyone because all the Tirzah girls, I feel like we've grown so close in our community, and it's awesome to be able to connect. And we have viewers, or not viewers, I don't know, call you viewers, friends, Tirzah sisters,
friends
all over the world. So if you're joining live, can you please leave a comment and we'll read off from where you're joining. You can say your city, state, country, whatever is appropriate, and I'm gonna stop talking and let Chanel lead this discussion, otherwise it just go off track.
No, it's all good. I'm really happy to be here. I've been, for the most part, I have been quarantined for about a month. And I actually unintentionally started my quarantine. It was like 2 weeks before Washington State and the US announced they were going to shut down, because I had to miss work due to some like health issues. And then the next week I only worked 1 day, and then it was like, oh no, we're not working anymore. So it's really good to see. But yeah, I wanted to I wanted to talk to you about the book of Philippians and kind of what we can do as Christians during this time. I really love the post you did on Instagram a while ago, and it just sparked this um, idea in me like, you know what, we need to have a conversation about this because I feel like now more than ever we need to have connection. Um, and I hate using this word so much, but I think it needs to be authentic connection because I know for myself so often in the day I spend a lot of time on social media, even though I try not to. And that's not really the kind of connection that's going to fulfill us. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this. Also, if you guys have any questions, please post them.
Yes.
I'll try to keep an eye on them the best I can. But I'm sure you could message either one of us after, and it's no problem. We'd love to talk to you. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to do just to start off is I'd love to say a few verses from First Philippians, kind of as opening prayer, because it just spoke to me so much about the importance of community. So if you have your Bibles, I'm looking at First Philippians verses 9 through 11, and it says, "And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God." And I just thought that was really beautiful because I think that just speaks to me so much about our community here at Tirzah. Um, So that's my hope for everybody tonight is that we can help point you in a positive direction. So, Yelena, I would love to know, first of all, what made you decide to look deeper into the book of Philippians? What really just, why this book? Because there's a lot of hope that can be found in the Bible, but I'd love to know what your thinking was.
Yeah, so it was actually on my reading schedule. So I read through the Bible in full every year. And I try to read Old and New Testament at the same time. And last year and this year, I'm doing a plan where you read Proverbs and Psalms 4 times, New Testament twice, Old Testament once in a year. And so just follow the schedule. And currently I'm 2 weeks behind, but it was all meant to be, apparently, because I think it's really interesting when people say, like, oh, I only read the Bible wherever it opens to me because a schedule, like, doesn't let, like, God speak to you, which I have experienced the opposite of that. Like, I really believe that God can use whatever you're reading that day to speak to you. Like, it could be Old, New Testament, it like could be anything. And for me, it was Philippians. So as background, so when I did that Instagram post about Philippians about 2 weeks ago, I think, and I was coming off of like 2 weeks of really stressful work, I'm working a ton, like I feel like all the time. And then all this was happening, like coronavirus and anxiety and lockdowns, and it was just such a stressful time. And I honestly just kind of let myself spiritually go in a way, and it wasn't intentional. It was just I didn't have time to read my Bible. I didn't have time to pray. I had so much worry and anxiety, and I like it got to a point where my anxiety just kind of all came back. I had an anxiety attack, and it was just not a pretty picture. And I was praying and I was like, God, I need to get out of this. Like, I can't breathe. I can't focus. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I was still trying to read my Bible, mostly because it stresses me out to get behind schedule, which is not a reason why you should read the Bible, but it worked out because I was reading Philippians, and it was one of those things, like, it just felt like Paul was writing to me. Like, I was reading it and it was like, oh my goodness, like, all of this is like what I need to hear right now. And I think I was reading, I have like 2 Bibles in front of me, guys, but I was reading the first few verses in chapter 2, and it talks all about how, it's chapter 2, verse 4 says, let each of you look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. And that was right around when, like, our shelter at home order came into place, and everyone was like, oh, I'm young, I won't get sick, like, I'll be fine if I go out. And everyone else was like, well, that's not the point. Like, you could survive it, but like your parents or your grandparents can't survive it. And it became this message of like, you don't do this for yourself. You do this for someone who may not survive this virus because they're immunocompromised or they're older or whatever it is. And so I was like, oh, that's relevant. And so it just took me like onto this path of like, okay, if that verse is relevant, what else is relevant? And I looked into the background of Philippians, and it was actually written during Paul's first imprisonment in Rome. And he would have been in prison for about 2 years, and he would have written this letter to the church at Philippi. I don't know how to say that properly, but he wrote this epistle to the church. And if you've read the book of Philippians in full, it's really interesting because it speaks about joy and like positive things. And a lot of people don't really realize that it was written in the context of Paul in prison for 2 years. It would have been probably a year into his prison sentence. So I know we're not in prison right now. We're quarantined in cushy homes for the most part. You know, we have lots of toilet paper and everything we could ever want. But, you know, we don't have that lack. We have a lack of freedom in a way right now because we're kind of stuck at home. So again, I can't relate to prison, but I don't know. It kind of felt like maybe Paul could relate, if that makes sense.
You know, it does. And what I think something I was reflecting on a lot yesterday was the fact, you know, again, like we're not in prison. However, and I think Paul does this really well in this book as well as some of his other letters. Paul's actually one of the reasons that I decided to continue reading the Bible in the beginning, because he taught me that suffering is universal, which is something I knew before I became a Christian. But his ministry really touched me because it was about how it doesn't matter what kind of suffering you've gone through or what you might go through. We all know what it's like to suffer. And so, yeah, I love that you mentioned the first part of Philippians 2. I actually have it highlighted like twice in my Bible. It's like underlined in one color, and then I went back and I was like, I'm going to underline this again.
I made mine like in a giant orange square.
Yeah, you know, as I was preparing for this, I started reading through it, and I was like, wow, I already have quite a bit already highlighted that I completely forgot about. I'm running out of colors.
Yeah, but like the context, when you look at it in the context of like what we're living through now, I feel like it's a whole new book. Like I've read Philippians before, obviously. It's like 4 chapters, 2 pages, you know, like it's not long. And like we like quote a lot of this like all the time, but like reading it in a different context, like it's like a whole new book. You're like, whoa, this was in there. So that's pretty
I know. As I was rereading it today, for some reason, I was like, wow, we have so many verses that we constantly pull from this letter, but I don't think I realized that they're all from the same letter, and considering Paul's circumstances. So one thing I wanted to know is what did, and it's kind of a big question to ask, what can the Bible teach us about suffering? But what can this book and other places of the Bible teach us about struggling with isolation, like so many of us are doing right now, or even the feeling of overwhelm? Like my husband, he's not necessarily isolated because he's an essential worker with his day job, but there's definitely still this overwhelming feeling of just powerlessness. So what did you find in your readings for Philippians?
I think it's just the connection that you feel between Paul and the people he's writing to. So he's been writing to a church that he planted. And so the beginning of the letter says that Paul and Timothy are writing this together. So I don't know if they were in prison together or not, but they're writing this to someone that maybe they hadn't spent too much time with, but this is someone who's close to them because they planted this church and they started this church. And the reason they're writing it is because this church was financially supporting them and praying for them. And they're saying like this whole letter is written of like with expectation. So Paul says, I like based on your prayers, like I expect to see you soon. Like I expect to be reunited. Like I think even at the end he says like prepare a room for me. I don't know if this is the letter or another one, but you know, he has an expectation of like, I will see you soon. Like, I don't know. And to me, that just gives hope, because I think a lot of people are like, when will this end? Like, but the point is, like, you can still connect with people. Maybe it's not face to face, but you can still connect with them. So Paul's connecting through a letter, but we have so many more means of connection now, like with social media, and everyone's on Zoom and Skype and FaceTime, and there's so many ways to connect with people. And the connection, I think, is more meaningful because, you know, it's temporary. This is going to be this way, right? Like, there will
Yeah.
be a time when I will see you in person, or we will see each other in person again. But for now, we can connect elsewhere. And I think a lot of the connection too comes from prayer, because Paul thanks the church for supporting him in prayer. And so, like, I think prayer also connects us on a deeper level that maybe all of us don't really fully recognize until situations like this, where we're separated, but we have time to unite in prayer together. So I think that just gave me hope, because they just felt so connected, even though it's a letter, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I pulled was how um, what you said about how this is temporary. And even Paul, when he writes, he's very much like, I'm going to see you soon. Like, this is all going to work out. He just has so much hope in that. And one thing that really caught my attention was in Philippians 3:17. And let me see. It says, join together in following my example, brothers and sisters, and just as you have us as a model, keep your eyes on those who live as we do. And something that really struck me about this paragraph is the fact that Paul is reminding us that us staying in fellowship with other Christians especially keeps our eyes on heavenly goals or heavenly gains rather than earthly losses. And that really spoke to me, because as I was reading this verse in particular, I was just reminded, like, I am so impatient as a person. Like, it's not just the fact that I'm wondering, like, oh, when is this going to be over? I want to go back to my regular life. Like, I want what I want. I want my job to be what it was. I want our business to be working again so that we have money and then we have all these things and blah, blah, blah. And I realized, like, wow, I have that mentality all the time when it comes to how I'm living on earth, that sometimes I get so world-centric, I completely forget that I'm a pilgrim. We are all pilgrims right now. Like, we are on a journey to get to our heavenly kingdom, our heavenly home. But I get so focused on myself and my will and my wants. And, you know, everyone's freaking out about toilet paper. Like, I think it's a perfect example of how just focused we can get on materialistic wants. And we completely forget to just take a breath and remember, like, God is leading us through something bigger.
Yes.
So
exactly.
we're already separated from those good things he wants to provide us. This isn't anything new. I think just quarantine makes it so much more pronounced. And we can either choose to have that perspective or just get stuck in it.
Yeah, I think it's like a rude, almost like awakening for us, because it's like you realize how temporary everything is and how attached we are to a lot of things in this world, because all of a sudden we don't have them, or we have a lot more of them. So, like, think about like social media. Like, I don't buy social media use has gone up since I've been at home, because I just have not more time, but like I have less things to fill my time, and that's not a good thing. Like, that shouldn't be happening. And so, I mean, I've been trying to like use the limits on my phone and stuff to like try to keep that under control, because again, it's that reminder of that, how are you going to fill that emptiness? Because all of a sudden we have this emptiness, right? And the temptation is to fill it with worldly things. And that's wrong. As Christians, like, we should be filling that with eternal, because we're not meant for this world. And Paul does talk about that. I think the end of chapter 3 and beginning into 4, he talks about, you know, our citizenship is in heaven, and we have to keep our eyes on the end goal. Like, remember what you're here for, and this is all temporary. And so he does talk about that a lot. And I do love that. I think it's a reminder we need a lot, like every day during this quarantine.
Yeah. How have you, Yelena, been trying to keep in touch with your community, especially your Christian brothers and sisters right now?
I honestly could do better. I have been using social media for that. So that's been helpful. We have been doing online services through my church, and so that kind of helps us feel a little more connected to. But they're filming the services like in the church building, but you can have up to 9 people, and so the building's empty, but like it looks like real church. So like I
Yeah.
can't imagine what it's like for people who are doing it, but for us it kind of feels like you're in church because your view essentially is the same. It's just on a screen. And I've been blessed to be like near my family, so I've been seeing my family, so it's been nice. But I think it takes a little more intention when you don't see people to like remember to like text someone, be like, hey, how are you holding up? Or like if you know someone's an essential worker, like texting, be like, hey, how's work? I know it's probably a crazy time for you, and I think it takes more intention to check in with people and make the time for that. Otherwise the day just passes by, and then you're just like, days turn into weeks and you're like, I haven't talked to this person in a while. So
Yeah.
it just requires so much intention, and honestly kind of like that's another awakening of like how much more effort it takes to stay connected, like intentionally or like authentically connected versus just like scrolling on social media.
Yeah, that's something that I've been really surprised actually. I was really nervous about not going to church, but I feel like the miracle, I guess, in my life is how much more connected I feel to the congregation I'm a part of. Like I go to a very we go to a pretty small church compared to the one that I used to go to, and it's just amazing. We do like a YouTube broadcast. It's
Mhm.
my two pastors, and they're pretty much just like sitting down with cups of coffee and Bibles, broadcasting on YouTube, and everyone's commenting and sending
Mhm.
prayers and everything. And then my Monday night Bible study, that's now on Zoom, which is really weird because it's a very personal Bible study.
Yeah.
So it's an adjustment. But one thing that's been really amazing is the fact that um, like you would think something like this would slow people down and trying to help people just
Mhm.
naturally. But I feel like in compassionate desperation, I don't know how to to put it, everyone is just like desperate to help other people. So I feel like I'm constantly getting like emails or texts from our pastor saying like, oh, we have a prayer request and someone's in need and they're looking for new tools or they like need help with groceries, and I've been overwhelmed
That's
by the
awesome.
kindness of people. And so I'm really hoping this is a call um, for Christians especially, but not exclusively, to find new ways to check in on others. And that's something I wanted to kind of transition into is I wanted to talk about spreading hope right now because I think that was something that was really difficult for me in the beginning. Uh, is one, I felt like I needed some hope because I just felt like, what is, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how long. Like, we're all feeling this way. But I also feel like there's not a lot of hope on social media right now as a perfect example, because that's where a lot of us are living in
Mhm.
at the moment. And I have a lot of friends and family who are not believers, and I just feel sometimes I feel overwhelmed because I want to comment or message them and spread the gospel, but I feel like that wall of fear coming up. So I've instead trying to just like post things on my own page about hope. And I
Mhm.
was just wondering if you could talk about spreading hope and maybe what Paul says about that in Philippians.
Yeah, so I have the perfect verse for that. I'm telling you, this book is
Okay,
just
good.
like perfect verse. Okay, it's chapter 2, verses 14 through 16. So I'm going to read them real quick. And I'm reading the NKJV version. It says, do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God, without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. So I read this, and again, I was like, this is so relevant, because I think that as Christians, like, a lot of the hope that we inspire now is not even necessarily in words. I mean, words are important, but it's also our actions and how we live right now. And so I posted a thing on one of it, either my own Instagram or the Tears Instagram, about this, like, not visual, I guess visual. So remember the story where Jesus was in the boat sleeping during a storm, and the apostles woke him up and they're like, we're drowning, we're going to die. And they're all panicking and freaking out because there's a storm, and I'm sure there's like water coming into the boat. I don't know, maybe I'm adding too many descriptions, but it was scary. They thought they were going to die. Like, that's what it says. Like, we're going to die. Like, why are you sleeping? And so I can kind of relate. So my dad is like, when he sleeps, like, he's out. Like, you could jump, you could scream, like, he would not hear you. Like, when he's sleeping, like, he's out. Like, whatever's happening around him, he doesn't hear it. So I can relate, because, like, sometimes you feel the panic. So we have tornadoes in Missouri. There's so many times we have, like, tornado warnings, and, like, everyone's up in the middle of the night trying to get shelter, and my dad will just sleep through it, like, just won't hear it. And so I'm like, I get it. Like, I get it. Jesus slept like that in the middle of a storm. And, like, what I'm thinking, like, my anxiety, like, overwhelms me. Like, I just literally try to picture that scene. Like, I picture a storm, and I picture Jesus just sleeping through it. And I, like, that should be us Christians right now, right? Like, there's always chaos and uncertainty around us, and, like, we should be completely at peace. Like, literally, it's like, another visual is like, you know those pictures where, like, it's all blurry, and then, like, there's one person just standing still in the middle, like, and the focus is on that person. It's the same thing, where it's like, people look at you and they're like, oh, this person is at peace. Like, this person isn't frantic. This person isn't panicking. This person isn't, like, they're just at peace. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just that visual of, like, this person is completely at peace. And I think that does reflect in our words and what we post on social media. And if we're like, we're posting all the same things everyone else is, which is like panic and uncertainty, and it doesn't reflect that inner peace. And Paul reflects it in also in chapter 1, verses 19 through, I'm going to read through 22. It says, for I know that this will turn out for my deliverance through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, that with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live in the flesh, this will mean fruit from my labor. Yet what I shall choose, I cannot tell. And I think this scripture is quoted a lot. I feel like it's in hymns and stuff and worship songs, and says, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. And again, I think it feels so much more realistic right now, because literally no one's life is guaranteed. Like, they were saying at first, like, people who are elderly were more likely to die from the coronavirus. But then in the United States, the statistics are that, like, all ages, like even infants, are dying from this. And so literally no one is safe from this virus, right? Like, you literally could live or die. Like, if you get it, no one knows. And again, that becomes so much more real, because do you have that peace of, like, for me to live or to die during this time is gain? Like, if I live, then I will continue to be, like Paul says, if I live, that means there's more fruit from my labor. And I think that's significant, because, like, can all of us say that? Like, I've been thinking about it. Like, can I say that if I live, there's going to be more fruit in God's field, in God's fields, you know, God's kingdom? If me living is not truly going to be, like, gain for Christ, is that going to magnify Christ? And that takes some, like, self-check-in, or being self-aware of, how do you spend your time? How do you spend your life? Like, if you survive this, if you get through this, even now, like right now, when you're, like, living through this, like, what fruit is coming out of this? Like, what, like, is this really gain? Like, is Christ being magnified in you living through this? And then Paul says, if I die, like while I'm in prison, like then I get to see the Lord. And that's also gain. And so again, it's like there's Paul is at peace of if I live or if I die, like God, Christ will be magnified in this. And so having that same mentality, I think, is what helps keep the peace in a way, because you think like, okay, like Christ will be magnified regardless of what happens to me. Like as long as I'm faithful to God, I'm obeying God, I'm ministering, and I'm pointing people to Christ, like to live or to die, like it literally does not make a difference because Christ will be magnified either way. And so to me, like that's so powerful. And I think the more you think about it, the more powerful it becomes. And I think a lot of us, it's also another like awakening or like another, I don't know, wake up call to realize that to live like maybe is not magnifying Christ right now for many of us as much as it should, if that makes sense. Because if our lives have been spent on ourselves and the things of this world and Christ isn't magnified very much, then like we need to rethink our like choices. But also magnifying Christ right now, it looks a lot like having peace and just being at peace in this world. Like I think that's where Christ is most magnified, because people are like, oh, why is that person so peaceful? Like, why is she not panicking to get toilet paper? Or why is she not panicking? Or like, you have to take precautions, obviously, and, you know, feed your family and all that. But then there's like taking precautions and just like following social distancing guidelines. Then there's like full out panic mode and like, you know, like, I don't know, you just tell when a person is at peace. And so, yeah, so that's,
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think when it comes to, I think for me, something that's really helped me as I've grown as a Christian is, because my question was always, like, how am I supposed to remain peaceful? You know, just like, again, in a panic questioning, like, what do you mean I'm supposed to remain peaceful? But I think something that Paul talks about in Philippians as well, can't pull a specific verse right now, of course, is the fact that we can know what it's like to be, you know, peaceful during a storm. When we look at the other Christians that we know who are peaceful in their stormy seasons. So right now that might seem kind of hard, or maybe it's not, I don't know. But because everyone's kind of like just full of anxiety all the time. But I know the people who have continued to bring me a lot of peace right now are really a lot of the women I've met at church, or friends that I've met through church, who I've seen them in the past 2 or 3 years go through some really heavy trials in their lives. And through it, they have, of course, we get emotional. I feel like something I had to learn is you can be at peace and still cry and still get angry. But they're the people who have just maintained their faith in God. Not necessarily that God is going to give us what we want, but He's going to provide for us and give us what we need at the end of the road. And so I think when it comes to how do we deal with this anxiety, I think one, I definitely recommend just thinking about who are those people I know in my life who are just constantly rooted in Christ, no matter how much hurt they're going through. And another thing I wanted to, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, another thing I wanted to kind of share is something I've been trying to do. I'm terrible lately. I have been turning on Netflix so much. Like, I don't want anyone to think that I have it together right now.
Same, trust me, same.
But something that I forced myself to do yesterday, which was a huge blessing, and I ended up being able to share it with a friend who was struggling, and it was a blessing for them, we have a PS4 hooked up to our TV, and it has the YouTube app on it. So I opened up YouTube and I listened to Paul Tripp's sermon on suffering. and I think it's on the Gospel Coalition page. But I wrote down some notes, just like some quick
Yes.
action steps that he mentioned in the end of the video that I'd like to share with you guys. Um, so action steps that we can take to help with our anxiety right now. One, gaze. Gaze upon the beauty of the Lord. And he references Isaiah 40 and Ephesians 1. And I love that he mentions Ephesians 1 because Ephesians is my favorite book of the Bible, and I read it so often when I'm anxious. So, and that goes into number 2, which is remember your identity as a child of God. And if you've read Ephesians 1, you will know that it's all about your identity. And when we remember identity as a child of God, we can therefore rest in the Lord. Some people will say it's abiding, resting, whatever you want to call it. It's exactly what you were talking about, Yelena, having peace and knowing who we are in the eyes of God, and his hope in the gospel and his love for us. And then 4, act. And we can live not based on our feelings, but live in our identities and our peace in the Lord. And I wanted to share that so much because his final quote was, suffering is a workroom for grace. And I have that like written all over the place right now. And I think that just sums up so much of my life and I think what we're all going through. Suffering is a workroom for grace. So we can take this universal experience of suffering right now that we're all experiencing on one level or another. And instead of panicking in the storm, we can use it to do the Lord's good works. And sometimes we can buy toilet paper for our neighbors or our friends. Like, I had friends drop off so much toilet paper today because I simply just asked somebody on Facebook to drop me off like a couple rolls, and now I have a bunch. Or we can just reach out to a friend who just needs that hope and that reminder of the Lord's love. So, or you can talk with a friend who lives in Missouri and like feel happy about it.
Yes, I think that's so important. I agree. Like when people like tell me I look like I have it all together, it's like you don't even know. But the thing is, like, I can do this live and talk about having peace and all of that, but the reality is, like, every day, like, I battle that anxiety, and for years, like, I didn't understand people who said that they have anxiety. Like, I've always gone 100 miles an hour and never had any issues, and partially it's probably because I was so overly caffeinated and stressed out that didn't have time to feel, because like 10 years later it was like 3 years ago, I think, at work, I had a slow couple weeks where like work just died off. I got off one project, was waiting for another project to start, and like I just didn't have work, and I started having like the worst anxiety attacks. And everyone's like, what is, like, you're not stressed, you're actually sleeping for the first time in years, like, what is wrong with you? Like, who has anxiety about not having anything to do? Me, apparently. And so I like went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you're perfectly healthy, it's probably just anxiety. And I was like, I don't have anxiety, I'm too strong for anxiety, like anxiety is for someone else. And they're like, no, you're having anxiety attacks. Like, and so I started seeing a therapist because apparently anxiety is better fixed that way. And so that's one of the things that you learn in therapy is when you're having an anxiety attack, you need to like focus in on all 5 of your senses. So like smell, like touch, like you need to like focus your mind on like all your senses, and that kind of like centers your whole body. And then another thing that helps is like putting an ice pack over your eyes, because it makes your body think that you're underwater and it regulates your breathing. So like,
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, so learning techniques like that literally take your focus off your thoughts and like on physically, like you physically have to ground yourself to calm your anxiety. And so like learning that, like, that applies to spiritual battle too. Like you were saying,
yes.
Like when you feel that anxiety, you need to take hold of something, like something strong and firm that you can focus, like redirect your thoughts to. And like, you're right, that's either talking to someone who's going to talk you off that ledge, like a positive person, like a person's going to point you to Christ in that moment. Or if you don't have that, like, I like literally when I have anxiety, like I have my Bible near me and I will just like open it and I will read it. Like I couldn't tell you what I'm reading. Like, it's not registering in my mind. Like, I just read and read and read and read and read until I can breathe again. And like, sometimes it's what you have to do. Like, because you have to take your thoughts, like, get out of your own head and take it to something that's rooted and firm. And for us, it's the word of God, right? Like, this is unchanging. Like, generations, centuries, and this is the word of God. Like, it's not going anywhere. It's not changing. I can read this and I know it's true. Like, this is the only truth I know. Nothing else like lines up. And so, like, again, I talk about peace, but like every day, like, I battle anxiety every day, like literally every day from this whole quarantine. I've had to like step away and like breathe and read the Bible and sometimes talk to someone and be like, I need you to like center me. I need to be centered on Christ right now, because like the anxiety is always on the fringes, I think, because there's so much uncertainty and nothing's guaranteed, and like, you don't know when it's going to end. And so it takes like a lot of just showing up. And I know I've talked a lot about it on the Tears Instagram lately too, and on the articles and everything, but a lot of it's just showing up and letting God do the work, because none of us can get through this on our own human effort. Like, you can't. Like, you need a supernatural spiritual support, almost like an IV in a way, where it's like a constant stream of support. You can't leave it. Like, I know all the days like, oh, I think I'm fine, like I'm better today, and it's like you get halfway through the day, you're reading news article and you're like, I'm not fine, not fine at all. And so I don't know, that's what's been helping me. And again, it's a daily battle. Like, it really is a daily continuous battle. So
I feel like a lot of times it's like I wouldn't say an hourly, but like every 3 hours, I have to completely reset my mindset. Otherwise, the next 3 hours or more are going to be really difficult for me.
yeah.
And I just hope everyone who's joining us right now is gentle with be gentle to yourself.
Like, give yourself grace.
I can't tell you how often I tell people that, and then when I am so anxious and trying to share with someone, a stranger or a friend will surprise me and repeat those words back to me because it's true. And if you wake up and you don't read the Bible and it feels like the day is getting away from you and you haven't accomplished anything, I just really want you guys to be gentle with yourself and read the Bible. Put on a sermon when you are, or a podcast on faith that's going to help ground you.
Worship
Do
music.
These things. Yes, worship music, anything that's going to get your head in the right place, even if you feel like you're physically not in the right place, if you feel like you're not okay, like it's going to be okay if you're not okay. I know that people say that a lot, but I've been dealing with anxiety for a long time now.
Yeah.
So yes, I've been using a meditation app, and I've been really just trying to ground myself. I'm in a very, very small house with 2 crazy dogs by myself every day. It's like having toddlers. And if you don't do what you want to, your day's not ruined. You can start over. Someone told me once, you can give yourself permission to restart your day at any point, whether it's 8 a.m. or 9 p.m. and you're tired. Like, if it's 9 p.m. and you can't sleep, open up your Bible, text a friend, and just let them know, like, I need some hope right now.
Yeah.
So it's so good to be here. I'm so glad we were able to do this. It fills my heart. I wish we had done more studies with the split screen now. So,
I know. Back when Facebook apparently had it, and like, I know we talked about doing it, and then we just never did. But we can definitely do this again. Now that Instagram Lives are only option, but
I know. Before we leave, I kind of just really quickly wanted to just talk about the fact that it is Holy Week. I know for me it's been really difficult not being able to go to church.
Yes.
Because now with my new church, I wasn't a participant with their Holy Week, so I don't really know what they did, but I know when I was going to my parents' Lutheran church, this week was packed. Like
Oh,
we had
wow.
Palm Sunday, and then we, I think, had uh like a dinner on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and we had like so many different services, and then it was Easter, of course, and so it's been kind of difficult for me. But one thing that I am doing this Sunday, other than attending church online, is I'm going to start going through the book of Ephesians with um, my friend Isabel, who might be on here, and her mom, who I've known forever. And
Aw.
so, yeah, I hope I can encourage people to, like, if you are feeling really depressed this week, especially because you can't do those traditional things, I just want to remind you, like, this week especially is about remembering um, the love and the sacrifice and the grace of Jesus Christ. And yeah, I don't know. Do you have any ideas for how to kind of like fill in your week with hope this week, Elena?
Yeah, well, first of all, I can't believe it's already Easter. Like, I feel like that snuck
I
up on
know.
us. I think that's the other thing is, again, it goes back to like with all this, you have to be more intentional because you don't have those outward things to focus you. Like, you don't have maybe church regularly to force you to like, spend time with Christ. Or you don't have like certain traditions that you would normally rely on to kind of keep you within the guardrails. It's kind of like on your own. And so I think that kind of also shows like your true colors because I also shared recently like who you are at home is like who you really are. So like right now it's kind of showing your true colors. Like are you
That
finding
post hit me so hard.
right? Like are you finding that time to still honor like these traditions or the memory of like this week in Easter on your own without the like traditional guardrails of church and community that would not force you but like give you that avenue to do that? And so all of a sudden it's like it's on you. So I do realize like that's really hard. Like I that's really hard to do because we rely so much on other people to do that for us a lot of times, and now it's like up to you. And so I think first
Hmm.
of all just being aware that it's up to you, that no one's going to do it for you, and then finding a way to do that wherever you are. And I think for a lot of us right now it is going to be alone physically but maybe connected virtually or at least in prayer. And so again, it's just going to be a lot out of us. Like, it's going to be a lot of us saying no to like social media or no to things, saying no to things in that of this world, and yes to things that are going to remind us of Christ and that he literally rose from the dead. Like, he conquered death for us all those years ago, and we're remembering that right now. And so I don't know. I know for me, it's gonna be hard to like shut off work and shut off social media and shut all that off and take my mind or focus my gaze, like you said, on the eternal. And so I think for me personally, it's gonna be the biggest battle is just showing up because no one's gonna make me or no one's gonna know if I do it or not, right? Because like we're celebrating Easter at home right now, so no one knows if you celebrate Easter or not, especially if you live alone. So, but God knows, and I think we talked about it in yesterday's article, that God sees and knows those who show up and those who seek him, and he rewards those who do it privately, publicly. And so I think it does show in who we are if we've spent time with Christ. And when we get out of this quarantine, like it's gonna be really obvious what you filled yourself up during this time with, and the fruit that the seeds that were planted. We'll see the fruit of that once we get out of this. And so again, just being able to remember that this is temporary and we're gonna get out of this. We are, and there has to be spiritual growth and spiritual fruit that we show, not we show, but like that has to be shown in our lives when we get out of this. And Easter happens right now, and again, remembering like how like that's like the gospel, right? Like the
Yeah.
conclusion of the gospel, right? That Christ died for us sinners, and that is the good news. Like, this is everything that we are and everything that we believe in, and just remembering that is so important right now, I think. And that goes back to full circle. When you remember that, it like that's what focuses you. That's what centers you. That's what you can hold on to. And if, like, I 100% guarantee you, like, any of you are struggling with anxiety right now, or fears or worries, if you take just these few days to just turn off the social media and turn off the TV, or at least like dial it down a lot, and just spend more time in word and prayer, listening to sermons, worship music, just like focus everything you have on that. Like, again, it's like the five senses. Just focus all of it on that. Like, pray out loud, like, feel it, I guess, like with everything that you have. Like, you're gonna emerge on Monday. Like, if you start now, like Monday, Tuesday, whenever, like, completely different. Like, and I can testify to that because I went through a really, really hard spiritual season. I didn't think I could get out of it, but just a couple of days of that, and it, like, I don't know, completely transformed me. So I don't know. That's the only way to overcome it. It's the only way to get through this quarantine, but also just these next few days that are so important to us. And it's just the reminder that I think we need. It's the hope that we need right now. And so, yeah. So that's what I would say.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to do this with you. I'm so glad we found a way to make it work.
Yes, thanks for working with us, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
It happened. I would love to do another one of these with you, especially in a time such as this. So if anybody has any topics they would like for Yelena and I to have a little conversation about, please message the Tirza magazine page and let her know. And also, if you commented, I was having a really hard time keeping up with different things. So if you commented, go ahead and feel free to message me personally at my page at Paper Violets, or message Yelena. I'm completely open to having conversations with you guys. So, yeah.
Awesome. So good. It made me happy.
It was.
I think we need more of that in this world.
You know what? I really just, tickets are so cheap. If I had the money, I would be like buying ticket. Like, if I knew how long this was gonna last, I'd be like buying a ticket to come see you this summer.
Someday. So
I would love it.
We haven't met.
It will happen.
Yet. Isn't that crazy? Like, I feel like we know each other so well, and it's like literally all virtual. But I love this community so much, because I know you and I feel the same way. Like, there's so many girls and women we've gotten to know over the years, and it feels like we all know each other, and like we're all spread out like across continents, and it's pretty amazing. So
I know. I remember the again, it was like, Yelena, I want to get to know the readers on Tears Out. Let's make a Facebook group back in like 2017, I think it was. And I remember when we started having people being added as members, I was in the car and I was crying out of joy, because I was like, oh my gosh, we have people literally from all over the world, like any country. It is insane how many people want to have that connection, and it keeps me going sometimes when I feel I am isolated right now. I love the fact I can connect with you and all of my Tirza sisters, because I am not alone. None of us are alone. And just message another person commenting on a Tirza post or an article, because they're probably just, I know for me, I pray a lot to God that he opens the doors for me to have the opportunity to meet new people, and then build up my community of faith. So yeah. All right. Well, I noticed we're matching too. We've both got the.
I was like trying to see earlier if you're sure you're wearing the same color. What? Great minds think alike.
All right. Well, thank you, friend. It was so nice to talk to you, and I will talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Have a good night.